June for 22nd, and we are again in our MA second semester class, and we can see Deepak is there, Marcel is there, and Raj Pulami is there, and these three people are going to present. Let's listen to them. Okay, move ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir. And good afternoon, guys. I'm Marcel Acharya, and I'm here to present with my representative, Divas and and we are presenting on the topic of our get essay, a collection of literature, the translational book and the variant writer by Rebecca Young Walpurgis. Okay, so talking about the author, Rebecca has interest in the area of translational approaches to the literary history, modernism, contemporary novels, multilingualism, and translational studies. And in this essay, the location of literature, she talks about the literature, the status of the literature, how the literature imposes the impact in the society, and how the literature moves across the place. Okay, let me go to the text now. Okay, so I am talking about precisely where English literature is produced, and we have divided the section, and I will be talking about precisely where English literature is produced and some of the you can call it the sum up or summary of the text, and then followed to me Deepak will present on the translational book and the Mandarin writer, and Rajkumar will present on reading beyond the nation. So this is the question precisely where is English literature produced? Okay, this is the question from Gauri Viswanathan's question from the essay about the transformation of English studies in the wake of post-colonial theory. So Gauri Viswanathan has written the essay in the wake of the post-colonial theory, and the question was abstracted from that essay. So talking about the post-colonial theory is a literary theory or the critical approach that deals with the literature produced in the countries that were once or are now colonies of other countries. So this is a certain idea of post-colonial theory. And it may also deals with the literature written in or by the citizen or colonizing country that takes colonies or their peoples as its subject matter. Okay, so while answering this question, the author Rebecca focuses on the dynamic relationship between the sites of cultural production and institutionalization to answer the questions of that above question, precisely where is English literature produced. So let me talk about the site of cultural production and the institutionalization. So the different books were written as per the socio-economic background of the writer. While someone writes about the book, we may find the author's historical background that includes the socio-economic condition, the main concept, or the experience of the writer. So that is the sites of the cultural production. So economic background, social background can be reflected in the writing of the authors. That is site of the cultural production. And institutionalization means not only the book can impose the impact on the place that they were written. The book written in one place can have the greater impact in the another place. That is the institutionalization, and which is also called okay. Let me see this. So So it can be substituted with the sites of cultural production can be substituted with the word production, where the books are produced, and institutionalization can be substituted by the word circulation. So the book can have the impact on the place where, on the other place where the book get migrated. So that is the concept of the sites of cultural production and institutionalization. And which followed this question. So one of the main question can be arise in our mind as well as in this text. So where is English literature produced? This is one of the thesis statement of the essay. So whole essay revolves around this question, and I'm going to display the answer. Look at there. Okay, so this is the thesis statement of this essay. Okay, so talking about where is English literature produced, the writer states that the location of literature depends not only on the places where books are written, but also on the places where they are classified and given the social purpose. So this is one of the thesis statement of the text or this essay, and the whole supporting points that we are expressing right now is located under this thesis statement. So it will be easy if you keep this point in your mind. So as I have already mentioned, the publication of the book, the author, the producer, or what language the books are published can have the greater impact on the places, on the outer places or the places where the books are not produced but where they get migrated. So that is what it is already. And following this question, okay. So as you go through the text, the writer brings the different references of the book, which supports the point that literature cannot be a single literary system. I'll come to that point, why it is not a single literary system. Okay, so why books are no longer a single literary system? Because due to one of the reason behind why a literature or a book cannot be a single literary system, because one of the reason may be the age of globalization. Because of the age of globalization, book get migrated from one place to another. Not only the book, the author, the writers, and the social impact of a book can have the greater impact in the places where the books get migrated, not only the places where they get published. So with the age of globalization, a book or a literature can be a global study or a global phenomenon. And the next thing is, or a point is, cultural comparativism. Let me explain this word to you. Comparativism. So comparativism is a context approach or a contextual approach to the study of a culture in a global or the intercultural context. That is cultural comparativism. So the book get published in a place can includes the cultural or the social purpose, social economic condition of the different diverse places. So cultural comparativism can be found in the book. So a book cannot be a wealth, or cannot be an important subject to a fixed place. That is cultural comparativism. And the next thing is new ways of understanding the community. So we will be revolved around the same point that I have mentioned to you earlier, that due to the globalization or due to the migration of the people, due to the development of the technology, the book can be a greater subject to a different society, not only a single society. So the new ways of understanding the community The book can have the greater impact in different society, different community, and a society can perceive a book according to their socio-economic conditions. So the perception of the society, community can be different as per their lifestyle and the structure of the society. So the understanding the book may be different as per the society. So new ways of understanding community can be another point to make a book not a single literary system but a multi-literary system. And next one is multiple or global literary studies. That is the same point as I have already mentioned. So a literary study or a literary subject or a literature or a book cannot be a single single subject of the study. It can be a multiple or a global. A book can be studied as a global subject or global literary genre. And the next, okay, I think I missed one point. And the next point that I am explaining right now is, so difficult to assert with confidence what English literature is. Let me explain this point to you. So as you go through the page number 920, 1209 in your book, I want to see that point. Okay. So if you go through that line, 12th line, as you see that there some of the books are original language edition, while other are the translation of the several source or translation. Can you see that point? A translation into English, for example, Give Me the Money from Chase language, and a translation into Japanese, 1977 from English. So English works have the mixed language, so it is difficult to address what the English literature is, or it is difficult to say with the confidence or address with the confidence that the literature or the books belong to a certain place. And next thing is non-Anglophone literature. So before explaining this point, I want to know about what Anglophone is. Okay. So Anglophone is belonging to an English-speaking population, especially in our country where two or more languages are spoken. Most often the Anglophone language is spoken throughout England, where English language is dominant. As well, there are other languages that were spoken there. So non-Anglophone literature also have a great impact in English literature. From outside the England, we may see in the book different non-Anglophone countries also get started to write about the English or assert the language of the English. So think of the Scotland, Ireland, Wales, India, Nigeria, Antigua, and the US and Canada and so on.
One more example can be the writers in your non-fiction course. If you check the writer's background, you will see that most of the writers in your non-fiction course, they are not from Britain.
Yes,
they are probably not from Europe, not America. They might be outside the centers of English language. That's one example.
And next one is multilingualism. So different books are written not only in this particular language, they are written in the multi languages, so that the audience of the book can be the larger group or the larger society. So
for example, first year in academic writing, you read one essay by Gloria Anzaldúa. What was the essay?
How to Tame a Wild Tongue.
How to Tame a Wild Tongue, where Gloria Anzaldúa talks about this issue, multilingualism, where she talks about the crossing between English and Spanish and Chicano language as well, right? Yeah.
Okay. So following this point, some questions can be arise in our minds. So for example, in what language does English literature circulates or where is English literature read, or who counts as a producer. So answering this question, books are no longer imagined to exist in a single literary system, but may exist now and in the future in several literary systems through the various uneven practices of the world circulation. So it is difficult to address about what exactly the English language gets circulated, or where English literature is read, or who counts as a producer, because the circulation of the book denied it. And to circulate the book, my friend Deepak Singh Thapuri and Rajkumar will present on that topic because of the different of the because of the Indian writer and transnational book and getting beyond the nation. These are the points that support this idea, and they will explain it later. Wait, then. So the next thing I want to address to you is today's literary multilingualism different from the literary multilingualism of the past? Let me answer this, and you can see there. So contemporary literature in an age of globalization is in many ways a comparative literature. Works circulate in several literary systems at once and can, some would say, need to be read within the several national traditions. So this is the answer, as you can see there. So as comparison to the literary multilingualism from the past, due to the globalization, due to the migration of the writer, the book get printed in different languages in the present as compared to the past. So, okay, this is it from my side, and I will be return to some of the whole essay. Okay, and Deepak will follow the presentation to support the idea, and let us go.
Okay, good afternoon all, as well as our professors and students. I am going to talk about transnational book and migrant writing. First, I am going to talk about transnational book. When I talk about transnational book, transnational means multinational, beyond the nation, or involving in the several nations. It means any book which covers content, ideas, or any information related to more than one nation as well as several nations. When we talk about transnational book, two terms comes in our mind: one author, next one book. Book can be transnational as well as author also can be transnational. It means that the book which brings ideas from different nations or catch the concept of globalization, that is called transnational book. Such way, transnational author means the author who have the knowledge about the many languages, literary culture about the many nations, and other information on which he is going to write. If he has knowledge of the multinational, that is called transnational author. Okay, second point, migration of writer is called to migration of literary culture. It means that when author migrated one nation to another nation for writing purpose. At same time, with the migration of writer, their migration of culture also moves with the migration of writer. Okay, then process of writing transnational book. It means how a book can be transnational, or how the contributors of or writers can make a book transnational book. First, translation. It means we can or writer can make a book transnational book by translation. What types of aspect can be translated to make the book transnational book? Characters. Sometimes characters of the writer can be translated or to be or to make transnational book by writers. In the book there is given example. You can look to page number 920, line number 10. Like this change involves switching the native voice of an anti-Semitic character from third person to first one in order to accommodate the cultural and historical context of Semitism within France. Means if any translated book written in any language, or then if the writer want to make the book transnational book, at that time he also can change the character of the book. Similarly, second point, cultural and lingual translation. You know, lingual related to language and cultural related to literary culture. When writer writes a transnational book, at that time he also can change literary culture as well as language. It means if the book written in any language or his native language of writer, he or she can change or translate the book to make multinational and to address the concept of globalization in literature. Similarly, contextual change. It means there are two types of context. One cultural context, next historical context in literature. The writer also make the transnational book by changing context, like cultural context as well as historical context. Second point, by substantial textual changes. It means the next one thing, to make a transnational book, writers or contributors can change some textual changes. It means bringing the changes in the text. The book which is collected by contributors, inside the book, the text can be changed, or the text can be brought from the many writers to make a book. That book can be transnational. Next, or third, being oneself a transnational author. It is very easy. Suppose to write transnational book, any author, he or she can be himself or herself transnational author. It means to write transnational book, he or she can get the knowledge of different literary system, different literary culture, as well as he can study of many languages, because by knowing many languages he can write his book in many languages to get access of globalization in literature.
Or an author can also live for part of his life in one country academically, then move to another country, then another country. That's possible. Yeah. Very happy. You're doing so good. It's so clear.
Jean,
Glad.
when Jean argues in the book, multilingual circulation of migrant fiction de-establishes national-based conception of literary culture. It means, suppose, yeah, in this point you can understand that multilingual circulation of migrant fiction de-establishes national-based concept of literary culture. Mainly, she argues, when book moves one place to another place, the concept can be changed. For example, the value weight of Munabandhan is in Nepal. When that book travels from here to other countries, the readers of there cannot get or cannot understand like the Nepali people understand that. Second point, interference of the local assumption in readers' conception, transnational book. It means, suppose, when we read the books in the university by written foreign authors, that book consists or that book cover transnational concept of book. When we read, we have different concept already in our mind. Yes, because we introduced it, we connected with Nepali literary culture. So we have already one types of concept in our mind to look the literature. So when we read transnational books, our one concept on assumption toward literature interferes the understanding of the transnational books. Third one, immigrant fiction often mobilize two or more cultural vocabularies or two or more nations, countries. It means that immigrant fiction or the transnational books which are related to mainly literature that mobilize or that bring the vocabularies or literary concept from the different culture or more than two cultures. One book consists the vocabularies as well as literary concept, literary information more than one nation or more than two nations, two or more than two nations. Multi-dimensional mobility. This is age of globalization as well as we are reading here globalization. This text we should connect with globalization. So, multi-dimensional mobility means now or after post-colonial colonization, most of the book became multi-dimensional mobility. It means they have multi-dimension, dimension in literary genre, like Eastern European immigrant biography, this one kind of genre in literature. Similarly, modern novel about women in the city. Similarly, new writing from post-communist Europe. These writing in literature are multi-dimensional mobility. It means there is one example given in book. Ivan Pakarkovaz gave the money a novel about the Czech woman who works as a taxi driver in New York. She wrote the novel living in US. Later she translated in English, and the novel theorized the one cultural mobility. It means when the writers wrote such novels in different genre about women in city as well post-communist in Europe, those became those theorizes its one cultural mobility in the literature. It means they became able to establish one theory in the literature. Any analysis of post-colonial novels need to take into account its metropolitan development to be transnational book. This is argument of Brown. He argues that after post-colonial era, to be any novel to be transnational book should consist about the metropolitan development in the world to be globalization. Okay, transnational context. Listen carefully. When we talk about the context in literature, two types of context emerge together. When we talk about transnational book, two concepts come together. Detailedly I will talk later. Now here understand two types of concept how emerge. It means suppose a writer who goes, suppose Britain from here, yes, or some writers comes in Nepal to write about literature of Nepali literature. At that time, two contexts emerge together. One concept of the writer who write about Nepali literature in living in Nepal within a small circle. Yes, we have already a concept. We have already a context in literature. Next one thing, when foreign writers visit in Nepal to write about Nepali literature, at that time, in their writing, transnational context emerge because written by them about Nepali literature that becomes a transnational literature. So that context is called transnational context. Either migration has a proper literary form, either migration transforms the realist fiction. This is question for, or this is issue for discussion here. Now, how can you understand transnational books about literature? Means whether it is a proper literary form or whether migration transforms realistic fiction. Migration means migration of the author or writers as well as migration of the books. How we can take them as a literary form or as a realistic fiction. Second topic, the migrant writer. First, we can easily understand with the topic migrant writer, the writer who moves one nation to another nation to write about something. As a, here if we here understand about literature, or if you understand outside of this book, migrant writer means those moves one nation to another nation for writing. The more book travels, the more writer may not travel. It means this concept to make clear us that the books written by writers can travel more than the writer travels. The books written by writers get more access of globalization than the writer. Second point, most successful writers are also migrant writers. It means that the writers who write by reading or being intellectuals, it means one Nepali writer write about the suppose history of America by reading university. That book cannot catch the more authenticity than the writer who goes there, sit there and physically involved there while writing the history of America. That will be more authentic, more real. So most successful writers are most migrant writers who migrated one place to another place. Those writers are most successful writers. Then who only write by reading books. Globalization of publishing generates migrating of book and writing. This point clears us that globalization of publishing, it means globalization or development of the publication house of the book generates immigrating of books and writers. Okay, investigation of writers by contributors. This point, listen carefully. When contributors investigate about the writers, as well as writers, there are two types of writers can be found. One more familiar with, second one more old-fashioned. There are two types. Even we are surviving in the era of globalization, in literature also, even still now we can find two types of writers. According to contributors, they are more familiar and more old-fashioned. More familiar means, more familiar means who participates in different literary system, different literary culture. That is different from the system in which they were born, they were educated, and first they published. Next one thing, more old-fashioned. More old-fashioned means those writers with who not familiar with globalization, familiar with multilingual as well multinational literary cultures, as well who remains small circle. Yes, it means who do not travel, do not give knowledge about many nations. It means who remains small circle as well as same literary system. It means if you make easy this, it means the writer who writes same, who write in same literary genre. Yes, that is small circle. Who write in literature about one nation or his native nation also. That old-fashioned writer who write, who access of globalization, transnational culture of literature. Those types of writers are called more familiar writers in this area. Susan Stanford Friedman argues immigration reflects a shift from national-based paradigm of literature to transnational mode, emphasizing the global space of ongoing travel and transcontinental connection. Like immigration of the books as well as immigration of the writers reflect a shift from national-based paradigm of literature to transnational. It means when writers immigrate from other countries to one country, that reflect literature or national-based paradigm to literature can be reflected, and that establishes transnational models of writing literature. Immigration of a writer is not leaving one literary system for another. It is process of making network of publishing literary work. It is clear that it means if a writer immigrates from one nation to another nation, that is not leaving his literary system. That is process of making network for publishing literary works, as well as he also brings his literary system in his writing and give them transnational network for publication. That process is not leaving his or her literary one system. Second one, no necessary to welcome to old literary system as new literary system. Here I understood that it means when we introduce with a transnational literary system, literary culture, at that time new literary culture emerging and emerging. Yes? We don't touch with, don't remain with old-fashioned literary system. We can easily introduce with new and new literary systems due to transnational book, globalization in literary system. Third one, migrant of writers establish a new way of thinking about the varieties and complexities of literary production. Means migration of writers or migration of writers establish new concept thinking about the complexity literary production. It means migration of writers brings a new concept in mind of writers as well as mind of readers toward literature. Okay, emphasis of migrant fiction. Mainly migrant fiction emphasis on three things according to the book. One, disciplinary paradigm of tradition. Second one, language. Third one, classification. It means disciplinary paradigm of tradition means migrant writer fiction also focuses on the what types of tradition in literature was already there. One thing. Second one thing, while writing migrant fiction, language. It means the writer should know the language where they migrated. Third one, classification. When migrant writer comes there and write about literature, then what types of literature? It means the literature written by there should be kept in what types of classification. Yes, what means written by them with which classification of the literature is suitable for that writing. Okay. Some scholars argues political and social process of immigration shape whole literary system, relationship among all the works in literary culture and books generated by immigrant populations. It means political and social process of immigration. When the migrant writers travels one nation to another, books travels one nation to another nation. At that time, not only book, not only writers travels with them, political system as well as social process of their society travels with them. At that time, when social process and political process travels with them, that social process, political process shapes three things: whole literary system of migrated or nation. Likewise, relation among all of the works in literary culture. Third one, books generated by immigrant population. Context is something I told the context already there. In the process of writing transnational book, there are two types of context. Suppose in Nepal, I already told that also, I want tell again, social context and literary context. It means in Nepal, we have one kind of social concept, social process, social system with us. We look the literature from that concept, which concept affected by our social systems. We view the world, not only literature, view the world by that system in which we are born. Next one, literary context. It means literary context means immigrant author and social concept non-immigrant author. If we talk connected with the literature, those literature written by non-immigrant writer, mostly that focuses on social context. Those literature writings are written by immigrant author that touches literary context. Here literary context means transnational literary context. The literature of migration. Literature of migration. Scholars say that, argues that the literature of migration written by migrant. It means literature of migrants means those literature are written by migrant. And the second one, Leslie Adelson say the literature of migration is not written by migrant writer alone. Here he opposes first idea of scholars that she says the literature of migrant is not written by only migrant alone. It means she says that the literature, sometimes intellectuals who study in university, those intellectuals also can write about the transnational literature or literature of migration based on their knowledge. Yes. So both types of writer, one writer who physically migrated, second one, those are intellectuals who read, they are also, or they can also write.
Really very happy to see how you are explaining. It's wonderful. कस्तो राम्रो लाग्यो हो. I didn't expect के यस्तो गर्छ होला कस्तो point ल्याउँछ ठक्क भन्छ. Good, go on.
So
Last day चाहिँ memorable बनाउनु भयो तिमीहरूले ल. Go on.
You understand, migration of writer can be written by both writers, one who migrated physically, second one who intellectuals. Conversely, Karen Madrosian opposes being a migrant writer does not guarantee migrant literature. Same thing repeats here. It means being a migrant writer does not guarantee migrant literature. It means migrant writer does not guarantee migrant literature.
You can be a migrant writer but not write literature. You may not be a migrant writer and produce literature, as you said earlier, right? Yes.
Second point, intellectuals can be producers of migrant fiction or migrant literature. The same point repeated here. It means who not only who migrated, they produce literature of migration. Also, intellectuals can produce literature of migration.
So it means you to write about the migrant literature, you don't have to physically visit the places or going beyond the nation. That is the
view of Anderson about Madrosian. Anderson focuses the transformation of literary culture. Madrosian focuses the argument of individual texts. It means first person focuses the transformation of literary culture. It means when writing transnational books or being a migrant writing, while writing the literature, that is process of transformation of literary culture. With the process of writing transnational book, there also literary culture transforms one culture to another culture. Second person focuses the argument of individual texts. It means he mostly focuses, he does not cover more area, he only individual text argument. It means what does our individual text tells, she focuses there. However, both assert that changes in thinking about migration require changes in thinking about belonging, community and civic recognition. It means changes in thinking about migration require changes in thinking about community, civic and yes. When we think about the changes in migration, yes, how our migration change the thinking of the reader, as a writer, as a other person, that connect or that require first we think about writer's culture, writer's recognition, civic recognition as a writer's community. That because that affect the process of writing transnational. Thank you.
We have one more part, I guess, right?
That's right. Yes, we have one more presenter.
We have one more presenter, right? Yes. Raj is there. राम्रो गर्यो तिमीले मलाई खुसी लाग्यो दिपकको त झनै खुसी लाग्यो आफ्टर लिसनिङ प्रेजेन्टेसन माई पर्सेप्सन अबाउट यु हेज चेन्ज्ड यो कहिले कस्तो हुन्छ क्लासमा चाहिँ टिचरले चाहिँ विद्यार्थी चिन्दैन कि चिने हुँदैन अनि कस्तो हुन्छ तिम्रो 30जना छ होइन सबैलाई पढिरहेको छ भने अनि तिमीहरूको त ममा पर्सेप्सन भने हुन्छ नि त अनि त्यो कहिले काहीँ त्यो पर्सेप्सन रङ हुन्छ अनि त्यो टिचरलाई पनि थाहा हुँदैन रङको पर्सेप्सन भन्ने अनि तिमीहरू काम गर्दै गर्दै जान्छौ अनि त्यो भएको पर्सेप्सन चाहिँ कन्भर्ट हुँदै जान्छ कि अनि कहिले काहीँ के हुँदैछ भने हामीले त्यो क्लासमा विद्यार्थी चिना हुँदैन अनि लास्टमा पछाडि गएर चिनेको विद्यार्थी मलाई चाहिँ दिपकले अस्ति सर अलिक गाह्रो भयो मलाई हेल्प गर्नु पऱ्यो भन्यो अनि मार्सलले पनि भन्यो पढाइदिनु पऱ्यो भन्यो अनि पक्कमा स्क्यान गर्छु भन्यो स्क्यान गरेँ अनि सिरोकोमा बसिरहेको छु स्क्यान गरिसकेँ अनि त्यो यहाँ क्लासको भिडियो चाहिँ अपलोड गर्दै युट्युब हाल्दै थिएँ कि अनि यो भिडियो अपलोड भएपछि क्लास चलाउँछु भने यसरी बसिरहेको छु लिइरहेको छु म लिइरहेको छु मलाई कसरी उठाएँ उसले पुरो बसाएर राति उठेँ ला पढाइदिनु भनेको थियो मैले एकछिनमा आउँछु भनेको थियो अब के गर्नु भन्ने भयो कि आज हेर्छु त मैले के हेल्पलाई गरिरहेको छैन कि गऱ्यो त गर्छु रहेछ नि त त्यही भएर के गर्नुपर्छ भन्दाखेरि यो बेरुवाड बानी के कुनै कुरा गाह्रो छ भने कसैले भने आफूलाई पनि यो कुरा गाह्रो छ भने लाग्यो भने एउटा के गर्ने भन्दाखेरि यो गाह्रो ठानेको काम चाहिँ म एक्लै गर्छु भन्ने कि एक्लै गर्छु भन्ने सपोर्ट नलिने कसैले एक्चुअली एफर्ट गर्यो भने त्यो तिमी जुझ्छौ नि त्योसँग स्ट्रगल गर्छौ नि हो त्यो स्ट्रगलले तिमी स्टुडेन्ट ल्याउँछ कि त कस्तो पाराले गयो जस्तै स्लाइड बनाएको छ ठिक छ गुगल गरिआउनु सक्छ साझा गर्नु सक्छ जे गर्छ तपाईँले यहाँ आएर बोल्नु त बोल्यो नि प्रयास त गर्यो नि त राइट सो जहिले पनि सबभन्दा बढी विश्वास कोमा चाहिँ होइन आफैमाथि कोमाथि भोग्ला सबभन्दा बढी विश्वास कोमाथि राख्ने राइट संसारमा आफूलाई सबभन्दा बढी हेल्प गर्ने को हुन्छ ल सुरु गर्नु राम्रो लाग्यो लास्ट डेमा चाहिँ यु सधैँ राम्रो गरिरहेको छु एन्ड डेमा पनि तिमीहरूले राम्रो गरिरहेको छु ल गो
Good afternoon, Director, respected teacher, and my colleagues. And special thanks go to Ms. Sansan. She had presented on behalf of me. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Honestly, my sole topic is the reading beyond the nation. You have already know that we are talking about the location of the literature. So beyond the nation, it refers the multinational. We have already discussed. And I talk about this literally. Books follow the across the nation. That means books follow the across the nation. And literary writing follow across the culture, nation, and geography. So literature on English, literally is uprooted, that means moved. Its location. Now it is not only in the nation, it is beyond the nation. Now you can see there what happens when the migrant writer reflects on the transnational book. Means what happens when migrant writer thinks about or talks on the transnational book. So the worldwide she has addresses some names of migrant writers: Francisco Moretti, David Damros, and Carol Phillips. And then she examines that how the writers, scholars, and translators, and anthologists, you know that anthologist means the who it is known as collection of literary works, especially anthologists, and have helped to save in the field of literature. And some points I have given there before the reading this subtitle: traveling literature and cross-nation, culture and geographical boundaries, emerging the anthology, and which can be read beyond the nation. An anthology includes various writing in the study of the comparison literature. We do not care for the historical distinction and national distinction. Later to be discussed now. Regarding on the language of biographies, it varies and constant. I have given 3 biographies, same author. See there. Carl Phillips. He was born in the 1958 in St. Kitts, small island, West Indies, and went with his family to England. The same year, he was brought up in the Leeds and educated at Oxford. So see the 3 examples there, same biographies. Sorry, same author, different biographies. And what I mean is that the language of biographies varies and constant. That means Phillips, he mentioned just only the local or small region than big continent and the nation. Let's do continue. A Caribbean, British, and US. See there. Representing from the Caribbean, British, and US, 3 countries. Phillips presents his book as both products and the philosophies of migration. The main points. His books are products of migration because they are built on literary and political histories that correspond to these several places. Now, second point. The migrant writers make the Anglophone literature culture more inclusive of writers of born outside of England. Yes, you know that Anglophone literature culture belongs to the English who speaks English culture. Sorry, who is the people who speaks English in the culture. So the migrant writers break. It means migrant writers more inclusive of the writers from the outside of England. That means I say that it is. I think not England's literature, it's the world literature. So he tries to make a cultural institution response to migration without reproducing the studies of the notion. That means he just that means Phillips, I'm talking about the Phillips. He make the cultural institution to respond to migration and without reproducing the studies of nation. That means he does not care about the studies of the nation. Now work-wise theories. She uses the term comparison literature to consider the relationship between the writing of the world literature and the protocols of reading text. That means to draw our attention to the traditional distinction between the disciplines of national literature and the discipline of the comparative literature. See, he uses the term comparison literature to drag our attention between the discipline of national literature. That means the discipline of the literature refers where they produced, what they wrote, and the another B word is discipline of the comparative literature, means what do we do with the books. Next, Phillips' books function as a world literature in several aspects. You know that. And they are written in, printed, and translated, and read in multiple places. And he has published an extraordinary number of genres, including the stage play, the screenplay, the radio, the literary review, and the memoir, and the anthology, and the novel. Let's continue. And as Phillips well knows, literary anthologies have been used throughout the 20th century to fix the expressive cultures of national. I think the theories she has taken from this Shakespeare, and that she mentions here the literary anthologies have been used throughout the 20th century to affirm the expressive culture. Expressive culture of a nation, I mean, is that the way of expressing the culture openly, it means publicly. Now that he has been thinking a world literature through the anthology at the very same time that many editors, including Phillips, have been rethinking about anthology and through the world literature. Now, since the 1980s, when the Phillips began writing his novels, trade publishers have also been producing anthologies devoted to the writing by women, writing by African Americans, writing by Jewish authors in Britain and Ireland, and so on. Now we can understand from this point that this is the world literature, not only English literature, not only the England literature. Extravagant Strangers essay he has written creates a tradition of very loose affiliation, free association. His contributors have different ways of being strangers in Britain, and some have only seen that to be stranger technically, like William Makepeace Thackeray was born in Calcutta before moving to England at the age of 5. This I'm talking about his writings. Now continue. Collecting the lives of several migrants, his books also represents the life of any single migrant. That means Phillips' book, including the author and essay the author collated account in a 2021 anthology of his own essay called A New World Order. Phillips described his collated self as a harmonious entity, that means organized, and autobiography. This entity talks about the autobiography of story of migration. So yet there is something not especially harmonious about the relationship among the parts of names. Names there, Africa, the Caribbean, Britain, and the US, and about the collective stories that these places are meant to represent. Now, next point is these different ways of arranging the geography and arranging the ways of people that through the geography today suggest us to several different anthologies in which Phillips' story takes place. If you see the biography of Phillips, we can understand, because he was born in the St. Kitts Island, and he moves to Leeds and then Caribbean Africa and the last New York. Reading the Beyond the Nation in the way of Phillips suggests means to recognize the literature, culture, and political stories that exceed the nation, and also recognize those that are the narrower than the nation. Now, reading beyond the main point is that reading beyond the nation in the way that Phillips suggests means recognizing the literary literary culture. That means identifying the literary culture and political history. That political history, you know that. what happens in the political, belongs to the nation, falling, rising, the nation. That exceeds. So the nation and also recognize those that are narrower than the nation. Now dancing in the dark, there is another novel, emphasize the international regional journey that makes a typical artifacts of the national culture. That means people who made handmade, which belongs to the culture, people of culture, that is artifacts of national culture. Now, that I'm talking about that novel. That novel eschews two aspects, which averts to two aspects of anthology of tradition. That one is, it claims to express a distinctive literary culture based on race. That means particular literary culture. Anthology tradition claims, but Phillips' novel rejects or avoids two aspects of anthology tradition. A and B, its tone of celebration, which has tended a form of groups' expressivity without acknowledging the violent history of such confirmation. Now, and his anthologies tend to emphasize the violence rather than creativity. This is the main point. And the value is collective, but his communities are made of strangers whose affiliation is fragile, provisional, and contemporary. Fragile, the other weak. His associations, when strangers whose associations is fragile, weak, provisional, temporary. And this stand is so counter, this also is writing, counter stereotypes, means conventional types about the British natives and non-British strangers by sounding the national histories of violence in the both regional and international registers. And another one is by comparing the condition of being the stranger in the village to the more expansive condition of being a stranger in the ocean. This is comparing village to nation. And now seeks to the question that is novel seeks to question the cultural heritage that villages they think, preserving. And by thinking about the migration of book in addition, the migration of the writer, this volume requests us to imagine that the location of any literature is achieved and unfinished. So I got trouble here, sir.
Raz, can I just make you pause here? My battery is draining. So what you do, I'll change the battery. And you continue with the same slide, okay? Just a minute. Can you give me 30 seconds? I'll just stop, change the battery, and then we'll start, okay?